Keith Hernandez joins us for this episode of the Shea Anything podcast. Lots to discuss. We have a not yet official GM hire in Billy Eppler and Noah Syndergaard headed to Anaheim. We'll discuss that. It all starts right now. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Doug Williams and Keith Hernandez with you for this episode of the Shea Anything podcast. Reminder, you can subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. Rate us and review us as well. We appreciate it. Shea Anything is brought to you by Verizon. It's 5G built right for the Mets from the network more people rely on, only on Verizon. And once again, weeknights, 6 o'clock on SNY, baseball night in New York. We discuss all things New York baseball. I'm sure you'll love it. Tune in, give us a watch. Keith, how's the offseason treating you thus far?
It's been great. It's always been great. You know, you get the chance to recharge the batteries. The weather's been wonderful. I'm going to have to get the right hip replacement surgery on the 2nd of December, but they say I'll be up and walking and I won't be overnight. And they said 3 weeks, I'll be as good as new.
So that's December?
December 2nd.
And what have you been up to down there in the interim?
Reading a lot, keeping an eye on what's going on in baseball, which has been a lot, particularly in Metland. So
a lot or a little, depending on how you look at it.
True, but very interesting. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it's never boring, ever. So. I think we should start with Syndergaard. We'll get to Billy Eppler in just a second. Syndergaard, the news is fresh. There's a lot of layers to this thing, Keith, because, you know, he declines the qualifying offer. And before we even learn about that, he's signed another deal from the Angels for even more money. And then little tidbits have come out. Sandy Alderson apparently told somebody at Carton and Roberts that Noah Syndergaard never gave them the opportunity to counteroffer. And then Joel Sherman writes an article in the Post about how Syndergaard felt like the Mets kind of like ghosted him and were not available and were not talking to him about their plan for him, or they didn't woo him at all. And meanwhile, the Angels were taking him out to dinner and wining and dining him. First of all, what do you think of his decision?
I know what I read, only what I read in the paper, and I'm not surprised that Noah took off and will be wearing another uniform. Why I feel that way, it's just a feeling that I have being around him, which I haven't been around in the last year and a half because of the pandemic. But he was sore at the Mets on a contract negotiation, I don't know, 2-3 years ago. And he mentioned something to me in spring training, and I didn't comment, and I just kind of tucked it away and filed it in my brain that, he was a little dissatisfied. So, it really wasn't like he signed for that much more money. What did he sign for? $21 million. Okay. That's another $2.5-3 million. That's a lot of money. So I don't want to downplay that, but it's not like they offered him the moon. And, all this stuff coming out now, you don't know if it's CYA or if it's fact. I don't know. So if in fact Sandy's side of it is what is the truth, then Noah didn't want to come back. And if it's the other way around, then maybe Noah wanted to stay. And, he's looking for negotiating leverage. But it didn't even get a chance to sprout. So he's gone.
It feels like it's possible. I don't know if it's probable, but it's possible that both sides didn't really want it, that neither was all in on it. Noah Syndergaard had said he wanted to be a Met, had basically pled for a qualifying offer from them. So he got that. The Mets, if what his side is saying is true, they give him the offer, they let the money speak for itself, and they weren't checking up on him like, hey, we really hope you accept this. You mean a lot to us. We see you as part of our future. And maybe both sides kind of got what they wanted at the end of the day. Noah Syndergaard gets a little bit more money, gets to play in a less pressure cooker of a market, and the Mets save $18.5 million. And I still think the Mets need his arm, but we don't really know what his arm is right now, Keith. I mean, he's thrown 2 innings in 2 seasons.
Well, that's for sure. He's had the surgery. It's the great unknown. People have come back. We saw him throw a little bit the last 2 starts. He had one good one in the first one, and he got hit pretty hard in the second one, but not throwing breaking balls. But you can disregard that. I think if anybody right now, it's helped Stroman more than anything, because the Mets are in a position now where, they were already short on their starting rotation, and this takes a big piece away. So there's going to be some scrambling going on here. And we got a new general manager coming in. We don't know if it's Eppler at this point, but he's going to come in on the run. He's going to have to come in a full sprint and get himself together with the organization and try to get this thing patched up and going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we saw yesterday Verlander and Syndergaard both, officially signed their new contracts. Verlander's making $25 million a year. Syndergaard's making $21 million a year, and neither of them pitched last season.
I really don't want veterans. Let's get some youth in here. Okay. And since Sandy's been here, and that's Sandy prior, there's been an effort to, like every team should, and what Scott Boras has been wailing about is that teams are just throwing in the towel early, and some teams, but want to bring a winner. And just it's 36 years now since the last World Championship, and that's every goal for every organization. But sometimes I feel if you keep hitting your head against the wall and you're not getting results, maybe you got to take a different tact. So I guess I'm leaning towards cleaning house.
Interesting. So you're saying basically kind of retool, rebuild.
Yep, I am.
Do you think that would work in this market?
I don't know. Met fans are resilient. And you've read, and I never read Twitter, but I had to read the reaction of the Mets fandom when Syndergaard traded, and they're not happy. And but Met fans always are there, always come back, and they're diehard. If you clean house, what do you get? If you're going to get rid of majority of your foundation, not your foundation, your veterans, what are you going to get in return? That's the key. I mean, look at the Marlins made all those trades, and those players they got from Milwaukee, they haven't panned out. That's always, you're rolling the dice and you're relying on your farm system and your scouting. So, it's a difficult choice, and the owner, Mr. Cohen, wants a winner and put a 5-year limit on it, and this is only the second year, so it's still 4 more years to build.
Yeah, I'm not sure he sees it that way.
I understand. I hear you.
I think if this team were located in Milwaukee, I think this roster, farm system, et cetera, I think they probably would have rebuilt. But Steve Cohen's money, he doesn't want to. I know what you're saying, but if he says 3 to 5 years, he's not saying, okay, years 1 through 4, we'll win 75 games, but year 5 will be competitive. I think he's wanting to compete every single year, but the problem is he inherited a structure that may not be able to perform that way.
All right. And look at the roster. Is it a roster that needs only 1 or 2 veterans to come and turn it around? And I'm going to have to say no.
But there are pieces in the free agency or maybe even the trade market that could make a big difference.
Sure.
Like if they were to add Carlos Correa or Corey Seager, or Matt Olson, or I don't know. I mean, I know that neither of those positions are needs, but there are players who could turn this thing around if they were able to convince them to come.
How about, I think, Marcus Simeon on the free agent?
He's a great player.
He's out there to be had. Uh, there's a lot of directions you can go. So they're going to have to put their heads together and figure out what the heck they want to do. And I'm not privy to that.
I think I thought it was interesting because I forget who it was. I think it was a Ken Rosenthal column that used the phrase like, you don't tank in New York, and that may have been part of what was making it difficult to convince a general manager to come here. Because I think especially younger executives these days want to put their kind of imprint on the organization. Like they want to use their skills in building an organization from the bottom up. And when you take this job with the Mets, you arrive knowing like you can't trade Jacob deGrom. You can't trade Pete Alonso. Like there's only so much work you can do to turn around the foundation that you mentioned earlier, Keith. And it's, you're getting basically the job of like maintain and advance, as opposed to use all your skills as an executive to change the culture of an organization. You really can't do the latter if you take this job.
So basically what you're saying, and I agree with you, is this organization needs more continuity, more stability. I mean, everything got thrown up in the air with the firing of Chili Davis in the middle of the season in May. Was it May? And the new hitting coaches coming in, not knowing the players. A lot of players liked Chili. It created a bad climate in that clubhouse for a while. I mean, the players, you realize, okay, coaches, managers are going to get fired. But things are a little bit different today with the players, and it was a tough spot for Quattlebaum to come into and to take it over in the middle of the season. You got to go with what you came to the dance with, and that's what you got to do. And I just never like firings early in the season. I mean, in any personnel. So it's interesting that, it's New York market. 7 guys said no, didn't want the job. That was shocking to me, that they wouldn't want that challenge. I was very surprised.
Well, it's hard to have less. You use continuity. It's hard to have less than the Mets. Think about it. Jared Porter, Zach Scott, they have one coach right now in Jeremy Hefner because everyone else has been turned over. They don't have a general manager. They don't have a manager. So in order to have continuity, you got to pick something and stick to it. And I think that, one of the points that Andy's been making about the GM hire is, yes, they've talked to a lot of people. Yes, some people have turned it down. But that doesn't mean rush into a bad decision, because to the point that we are making, Keith, they need to hire someone that they think will be here in 10 years, because that's the number one goal, is continuity. So yes, on the surface, are they going to look bad publicly if a bunch of people say no to the job? Sure. But they care less about that and more about Billy Eppler, whoever takes this job, being here in a decade. And that's why they've been okay with taking the hit from a PR standpoint to make sure that they get the right person.
The first thing they got to do is get a general manager that wants to hire a manager that he wants. Sandy is stepping down. He, as president last year, let the 2 general managers have their say and do what they wanted to do. He wasn't hands-on. That was their domain. And I'm sure he wants it that way. So the first order of business was a general manager. Now they will get a coaching staff and they will hire a manager. But right now, the number one important thing is a GM, and it looks like we're pretty close. I mean, we're speculating.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. You're listening to the Shea Anything podcast, brought to you by Verizon. It's 5G built right for the Mets from the network. More people rely only on Verizon. So let's talk about Billy Eppler. I mean, it's not official. It may be in the coming days. You may be listening to this after it's been made official, but both sides have agreed that he'll be the general manager. And, fascinating track record because he's been a scout. He's been a scout in New York. He worked with and under Brian Cashman for years. Then he goes to Los Angeles where he gets his big job and gets his big break. And in Anaheim, he did a lot to turn that into a winning franchise. He brought Ohtani to Anaheim.
Franchise?
Well,
fourth place finishes?
Let me get to my bigger point, Keith.
Okay.
Ohtani, Trout extension, Anthony Rendon, all superstar players. Justin Upton, he brought them in. The problem was he inherited a foundation there that was not ready to win, and he was trying his best to do so while he was there. He gets fired. None of what he did resulted in postseason baseball, Keith, to your point. So do you look at a resume like that and think, wow, he did what he could to bring in superstar players there? Or do you look at it and say, those superstar players didn't do anything while they were in Anaheim? So how is this guy, how has he built a resume that is appealing to somebody like Sandy Alderson and Steve Cohen?
Well, what he did in, I was going to say California, Los Angeles. I'm showing my age there.
Both are technically Angels. Correct.
I could never put my arms around the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. I could never put my arms around that. What he did with the Angels was bring in offense, not pitching. So Ohtani was a dual guy, and I never figured that they were going to be able to use him successfully in a dual role. I mean, only Babe Ruth, right? So that's so unusual, and you can't tell me that they said, "Okay, we got a pitcher and an outfield."
Right. They thought this is what he does in Japan.
It was another hitter. So I think that he's what I've read about him is all I know is that he is an analytics guy. And I think that is part of the game now. All the young Turks coming up are analytics people, or otherwise they're not going to get hired. Okay, that's fine. But this is a whole new clean slate. And, certainly working with Cashman all those years is a plus. He didn't have success with the Angels, but the Angels have always been kind of a jinxed organization. When Autry was the owner, he was vying with Steinbrenner with money spent, and they could never get it done.
They had success under Mike Scioscia, but that was
the one championship with the Giants flu, and but still they won. So it's a whole different set of circumstances here with the Mets. It's a new organization, and certainly more pressures. If anything, he coaxed his owner to spend money because he went out and got the players and spent a ton of money. Got the owner to open up his wallet.
Yeah.
So he must have had a good relationship with that owner.
You're right to make the point that he does not have a pitching track record as a general manager in Anaheim. That's always a team that does way too little to build a starting rotation specifically. The good news is that he's inheriting a team now with Jacob deGrom as the version of Mike Trout on this team that he had in Anaheim, which is, you've got the best pitcher in the world, not the best player in the world. And, maybe you build on that as you build a rotation. However, he's going to need to prove that he can focus on starting pitching because the Mets don't have much at all other than deGrom. They have Taijuan Walker and then a bunch of question marks like Tyler McGill and David Peterson. No more Noah Syndergaard. Marcus Stroman's going to want the world. You have Carlos Carrasco coming off elbow surgery. He is going to think about what he's got on his plate, Keith. If this job becomes official, he's going to be asked a million questions. First of all, it's going to be, why didn't it work in Anaheim? What are you going to do differently? What are you going to do about the rotation? What are you going to do about a manager? What are you going to do about a hitting coach? He not only has to build a roster, he has to build a foundation, and then hopefully it works.
He's going to have to do a lot of homework, that's for sure. He's going to have to be poring over a lot of paperwork with assessments on his roster and his minor leagues too. So right now things are. It's like you're on the San Andreas fault line with the Mets right now. It's like, when is the earthquake going to come? But I think that they'll get it right. If you're going to hire a GM, you got to put it in his hands and let him do what he wants to do. And I have no problem with a new vision here.
Yeah, I think Mets fans are happy to welcome a new vision. And Sandy Alderson, to what you said earlier, wants to be the president of a team, which means that he's, just as involved in marketing and ticket sales and all that stuff as you are in baseball operations, which, he's overseeing a lot of different things, but he's not the one telling us why they decided to pass on a guy on the free agent market, et cetera. That will be Eppler or whoever officially gets this job. Sandy will zoom out and look much more big picture. And meanwhile, Billy Eppler was dealing with Artie Moreno in Anaheim, who is known as a very difficult owner to work under. Steve Cohen, jury's still out in terms of whether, working under him is, and the checkbooks that come with it, is worth the potential, communication that he's going to have with you, that is his involvement. We'll see what he's like to work for. We don't know those answers yet. But I guess, Keith, what I am intrigued to hear your answers about are a couple other names, a now former Met, and then some names that are still on the roster and where you see them going forward. Michael Conforto does not accept the qualifying offer. He's coming off a down year. Scott Boras client, he wants as much money and years as he can get. Do you think there's any chance the Mets bring him back? Do you want the Mets to bring him back?
I think he's gone. I think he's going to walk. That's my feeling.
And what do you think he'll get?
He wants a new environment, new atmosphere. And I can't blame him.
What do you think he'll get? What do you think he deserves?
I don't know what he's going to get. It's just speculating. He'll certainly not be in the poorhouse by any stretch of the imagination. But there's going to be a lot of teams interested in him. Just think of all the different hitting coaches that have come here over the last. I think with all those changes and with the players today so reliant on the analytics guys that are in there feeding them all this information, and hitting coaches, this generation of players, and it's going to continue forward. We weren't reliant on our hitting coaches. So you have this shuffle the deck with Conforto, and I think it affected Mike in a negative way. I really do. I think it affected Dom in a negative way.
Let's talk about Dom. He was one of the names that I wanted to get your thoughts on. So again, we don't know how much change there will be in terms of what this roster looks like going into the offseason. However, he's on a list of guys that may stay, may go. What do you think of Dom's future as a player?
Depends on the designated hitter. If there's a designated hit, there's not a designated hitter, he could be gone.
Yeah, lots depend on the CBA, the Mets
and
roster.
Another thing too, we had a COVID year with 60 games, and now we played 162. There was 102 games that weren't played, and 60 games does not make a season. So a lot of things just did not happen that they thought were going to happen. Let's face it, the offense was not very good, and most of that offense underperformed. And that's a concern. So will the real Jeff McNeil stand up? Will the real Dom Smith stand up? I've been through this too. When I played in 77, I had my breakout year, as I mentioned. I hit 18 home runs, not 18, 15 home runs, drove in 91 runs, hit 291. The next year in 78, I hit 255, have a terrible second half of the season. think I hit 210. And then I come to spring training, and who's the real Keith Hernandez? Is it this guy in 77 or this guy in 78? And I had a 79 year, and I was on my way. So that's the great unknown. So
would you be wary of a team giving up on a player after good year, bad year, and then being like, I don't know who this guy is. Let's cut bait. So that would have been premature for your case.
I think they've been around long enough to know the personality of the player. There's a lot. It's not just cold numbers and statistics. It's what goes on in the clubhouse, how that player, is he a team player? Is he not? There's a lot of intangibles that go along with make a player. Some players bring more than they're just what they provide on the field. They add a lot more. Some players, that's all they bring is their performance. So they've had enough time to evaluate. They know what they got personality-wise. It's just, what can you get for these guys? And you've got a GM coming in. He hasn't seen Dom play every day. I mean, Sandy has. He hasn't seen JD Davis. It's a difficult situation.
Do you feel strongly about it, like, rather than going one by one, Dom, Jeff McNeil, JD Davis, Pete Alonso, even Brandon Nimmo, do you feel really strongly about any of them as being like a core foundational piece?
Well, I think Pete. I think Pete had a good year. He stayed pretty consistent. But he hit 30 plus home runs, and that's, he's not going to 50 home runs it's not an easy thing. And that was a high bar. I thought he had a good year last year. So we'll see if he builds on that. So Pete's really the only one, and Lindor is going to be here. He's not going anywhere. Our catchers, I don't think, are going anywhere because they're good defensively and they throw well. Now, does that mean we bring in another catcher and they become a second string catcher? That's a possibility. I think Nimmo's safe because he brings energy and he plays hard and he's at top of the order. I don't think McNeil's going to be back. I think he's going to go. So there you go. You got, JD Davis too. There's a lot of things that you can maybe have a multiplayer trade to bring something. I don't know. I don't know what's available out there. And I don't think that Steve Cohen is going to be a difficult owner to work with. I think he really wants to bring a winner here.
Reminder, subscribe to the Shea Anything podcast wherever you're listening, Apple, Spotify, wherever. We appreciate it. Another reminder, the Shea Anything is brought to you by Verizon. It's 5G built right for the Mets from the network more people rely on, only on Verizon. Keith, if I don't talk to you, good luck with your hip surgery. Enjoy the rest of the couple weeks of this offseason before the December 1st deadline when we may have a lockout, but look at the time.
That's also a possibility. Right?
Yeah. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon, and thanks for listening, everybody.